Well, I'm kind of in between movie reviews at the moment, so I felt a commentary on what's going on with a lot of things going on in the movie world at the moment. Two subjects I'm going to be covering this week. One is the Lady and the Tramp remake trailer. I'm getting a sense of deja vu with a lot of things from Disney, but I feel lately like Disney are nothing more than a used car salesman. They don't make anything. All they know how to do is to resell you things. I mean, look at the live-action Lion King movie. And look how well they've handled Star Wars. Oof. Less said about that, the better. I'm going to be talking about, like I say, the Lady and the Tramp live-action remake and the Sony Disney Spider-Man situation. Oh dear. I'll get to my thoughts with the trailer for Lady and the Tramp. Here's where I'm going to be nice. It's well shot. As somebody who has an eye for visuals and somebody who, when they see a moment, they have to get that framed or get that filmed because in next to no time it's gone. So I like the visual aesthetic that they've gone with. It's a decent vocal cast. It's an interesting take for Tessa Thompson to be cast as the lady. The CG is actually very good for the animals. It's kind of carrying over what they did with the Lion King. It's going for that very ultra photorealistic look for the animals, and I have no problem with that, because if you're going to do a live-action remake, then you got to make the animals look as photoreal as you can possibly get it. And, you're sending in live-action, so if you have cartoon-looking animals in something as credible, especially how the original was, even in 2D, you have to treat these characters with a lot of credibility and respect, and I feel like they've done them with the designs. The set designs look amazing. As somebody who loves authenticity, with the amount of time and effort they've actually put into this, so that's impressive, and it's a nice recreation and look and feel of the late 1900s. And this is where the cons come in. Why is this being remade? The original, I've never been a huge avid watcher of the original, but when I have seen it, you could put that movie out brand new today, and it will draw in numbers at the box office, because Disney had, and still did have, up until when they did the 2009 Princess and the Frog movie, they have an animation style that is timeless. I've said this quite a few times before, you have something like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was 80 years ago, and people are still taken in by the magic of that. Pinocchio is another example. I mean, you look at how well that was done in the 30s, it's still mind-boggling, amazing how they did that in 2D. There's this magic look to it that you can't replicate that in live action. So, I know what people say, but it's 2D, it's outdated. 2D is timeless. CG is going to look dated in 5 to 10 years. I mean, look at the 2004 Thunderbirds movie. Another huge thing is this is only going to be on Disney's streaming service, Disney Plus, so if you're somebody that's not really into the idea of doing streaming services, then you're going to lose out on this one, unless, of course, you wait 5 or 6 months and then you put it out on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K. I think you're probably more inclined to do the latter of that, because at least then you're only going to be paying for the movie once, rather than having to, shell out $5.99 or $9.99 a month, depending on what the service charge is going to be each month for the subscription fees. So, Disney are shooting themselves in the foot already. I can understand it if you have this service for all their classic stuff with regards to TVs, movies, animated series, anything from Rescue Rangers, DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, arguably the best Disney show they've ever created, and Tailspin, which is one of my personal favorites from the 1980s. You know, I understand that, but if you're going to put like a brand new movie on there, I know a lot of people don't like to go to the flips because it's expensive, but there are a lot of us, including myself, that actually like the experience. And plus, it's an excuse to get yourself out of the house for a few hours, you know, taking a bit of necessary fresh air if you're, you know, walking, cycling, or getting on the train. It's a nice way just to get out of the house, and sometimes you go shopping afterwards and taking a couple of things that you wouldn't necessarily buy for yourself. This kind of correlates to the first one again, but the original's a classic. Why are you remaking this? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. But, you know, money. And finally, Disney are out of ideas, but then, you know, people are going to be pulling the whole, well, no shut, Sherlock. But it's just highlighting this more and more and more with each passing year. You know, you go back to, say, the 60s, where Disney were pumping out stuff from things like the Aristocats. And then you go to the end of the 1980s, where they put out The Little Mermaid. I mean, The Little Mermaid is another one that's a timeless classic. One of my personal favorites as well. But they're just like, no, let's just do live-action remakes of our animated movies. I have a question. Why? Oh yeah, because money. The only time, and I've said this so many times down the years that I'm probably blue in the face from saying it, but I'm going to repeat it for posterity. You should only take something to remake it, reboot it, if the story had a satisfying conclusion from where it left off. I mean, the Dark Knight trilogy, for example. You know Batman's always going to get another set of movies. So, because his had a satisfying conclusion with Dark Knight Rises, you knew, you know, a reboot and a retelling later along the line was inevitable. Or another example is, if you take a movie that was by far, by all accounts, absolutely terrible beyond recognition, that nothing could be done to salvage it, that's when you come along and say, okay, let's remake it. Let's actually put the proper vision out there that the writer, the director, the producers had in mind, and actually do that original vision justice so that, you know, the story can be told properly. And I could think of several that could benefit from that were terrible movies. Number 1, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Jurassic Park 3, Iron Man 3, Superman 3 and 4, Superman Returns, Iron Man 3, shut up, that was an awful movie. RDJ and the suits were the saving graces, but that movie was awful. But yeah, Lady and the Tramp does not need a remake at all. I don't know why Disney are doing it. Money. And because, it's like I say, they're like used car salesmen. They can't make anything. All they do is sell you things. So, I'm not going to get the Disney Plus service for that. I'm certainly not going to get it for the Marvel stuff. The only way, however, the only way I may be coerced into getting the Disney streaming service for an extremely limited time, the live-action She-Hulk series. Now, it's no secret to most people, I'm a huge fan of the character, particularly of the 96 animated series where you had Cree Summer taking on the role of Jennifer Walters and She-Hulk in Season 2 as this very charismatic and sassy version of the Hulk's cousin, and I'd love to see how that would translate into a live-action setting. And I can already think of one particular person, if they were able to do this, get Eliza Dushku to be the live-action She-Hulk, because she's already played Shulky in animated form. She knows the character. It'd be like if, say, 10, 20 years ago, you were going to do another live-action Hulk series, Neil McDonough would have been ideal to play Bruce Banner, because you listen to Dono's delivery as Bruce in not only the animated series, but the 2004 Hulk Ultimate Destruction. He is Bruce. You hear it in his delivery, you actually feel the character's pain, where he doesn't want to transform into the Hulk, he actually wants to find peace as Bruce, and he actually wants to live a normal life. That is stunt casting. It's very, very rare where you get a voice actor that can actually be that character. Another example, Kevin Conroy, when he used to try as Batman in Batman the Animated Series, you hear his vocal delivery and it's like, yes, he is Batman. Or when you hear Christopher Daniel Barnes as Spider-Man, to a lot of people from that generation in the mid-90s, he was Spider-Man, because you hear the delivery and it's like, yes, that is our Spidey. So, with Eliza, make her the She-Hulk. As to how much, I'm pretty sure they're going to do some very interesting camera shots, because Jennifer is supposed to be bigger as She-Hulk. I mean, it's not like a situation where, well, she just gets a little extra muscle and turns green skinned. No, in most incarnations, she does actually get a little bit taller. So, whether they would actually have her purposely bulk up, or whether they would just have her on a green or blue screen, I don't know. But I know she'll do the role justice. That's my thoughts on She-Hulk. Only thing I will say is, can you make this one just about the comic book story and not put a social political message in there? We got enough of that nonsense in there these days, guys, and I'd like my comic book movies to be faithful to the source material, and not, and can we not have the usual Troy bad message? And here's the thing, as I've said for context, I'm not a fan of the guy. I personally think he's his own worst enemy on occasion, but I'm getting sick and tired of hearing about him as the butt of jokes in most of these movies. Because if you truly want the guy to go away and be taken less seriously, you stop talking about him. It's that simple. Now for the Sony Disney Spider-Man situation. Currently, the deal that they had originally, when they signed him on from 2016, he had 5 movies. 2 movies from Sony, which was Homecoming and Far From Home, and the 3 MCU movies, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. Disney would get no money from the Sony movies, but vicariously, Sony wouldn't get any money from, the Avenger movies and the Captain America 3 movie, because, why should Sony get money from something that's not theirs, and vice versa? But Disney wanted to put up a new deal. They wanted to get 50-50 from all movies, and Sony are like, hey, why should we give you money from movies that we're making? But they in turn wanted a 95-5 split, and I'm like, I don't know. I get they want to protect, one of the most profitable, cash cows, for lack of a better description. But at the same time, 95-5 split, you're asking a lot there, Sony. I appreciate times are tough and you've made some bad decisions. Ghostbusters 2016. But, you're not doing yourselves any favors there. And apparently the new deal that is being proposed is Disney can continue using Spider-Man, but as long as Sony have their own Spider-Man in the Venomverse. So we would see, Maguire, Garfield, Holland, and Guy number 4 to play a live-action Spider-Man within the last 19 to 20 years. Oh boy. I think probably more than likely this one will happen. because the MCU would be asinine, or more should I say, Marvel Studios and Disney, respectively, would be asinine to not try and find a way to have Spider-Man kept in the MCU. Personally, I think this version of Peter Parker is not that great. I mean, Tom Holland is a good actor. Not going to take anything away from the guy, but I feel as though that... I don't know. I think Spidey... Alright, let me put it to you this way. If there was a way to fuse both Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield's performances in one, where you get the quiet and shy, awkward Peter Parker that's true to the comics that Tobey Maguire did, but you have the snarky and witty Spider-Man as Andrew Garfield had portrayed him, that would have been the perfect Spider-Man. There probably is a comic book line that's called The Perfect Spider-Man. Well, they've had amazing, they've had spectacular, The Perfect Spider-Man. Garfield's my go-to guy because to me, that's Spidey with regards to the wit and the humor, because, the humor is a facade just to mask his own feelings, which is, why he has the mask on, so, is kind of protecting what's going on underneath. Maguire, first live-action actor that I ever saw in the cinema to actually play the webhead, and Maguire has a special place from where I've watched Spidey movies over the years, but Garfield's my go-to because he and Emma Stone were the saving graces of Amazing 2, but the first Amazing Spider-Man, I thought that was a good movie. Yes, it has its faults, but it took the awful aftertaste of Spider-Man 3 out of my mouth, and that alone on its own merits is saying something. But then Amazing 2 comes along and it's like, Spider-Man 3, all is forgiven. So, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, either side could be seen as being greedy, particularly in Sony's situation. I mean, 95.5 split, come on guys. Again, appreciate times are tough, but you really need to go that far? So, bottom line, I hope they can find a way to find a compromise where everyone's happy. But I think more than likely it's going to be where Sony get their own version of Spider-Man and Disney can continue using the Tom Holland incarnation, with MCU Spider-Man. One thing I'd like to see them address in future movies is Uncle Ben, because the only nod or reference that we had to him was in Civil War, where Parker says, when you can do the things that I do and you don't, the bad things happen, and they happen because of you. And then his suitcase is shown in Far From Home with his 3 initials, BJP, I think they were. And you'd think, it's probably the last few things he ever had of his uncle, you'd think he'd be a tiny bit more protective. He loses the suitcase, doesn't, utter a flicker of emotion. That's a little bit of poor writing there, because most people that have grown up with Spider-Man lore know that Uncle Ben was his father. Obviously, Richard Parker is never seen throughout most of Peter's life, but Uncle Ben was his go-to father figure. Even in the first movie, where you have Norman Osborn trying to reach out to him under false pretenses, because he's goblin and controlled by that point, says, I've been like a father to you, and he simply utters, I had a father, his name was Ben Parker, and I'm like, perfect. But with the Tom Holland version, I let it slide with Civil War because, hey, if most of us were teenage superheroes and we got to hang out with Iron Man, we'd be all fanboying out, hanging out with Captain America, War Machine, and Vision and what have you. Homecoming comes along and it's like, yeah, it's kind of extending that and what have you. and sort of keeping in still why he should be more of a neighborhood-friendly Spider-Man rather than be a full-blown Avenger, which does happen in Infinity War. But I felt like with Far From Home, it was kind of repeating what the first movie had done, where nobody learns a damn thing. It's just more like a jokey thing going along, where they even make fun of, the events of Endgame by having Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, paying remembrance to Black Widow, Vision, Iron Man. And see, here's the thing that they don't understand. With Captain America, he didn't die. He simply retired. I mean, from the public eye, yeah, Cap is gone, but we know the true story. Cap just simply retired. But then again, I think people would find it a bit nuts if you say, oh, he actually went back into the past to live out his life with it, with his love interest, only to come back to the future and he's an old man. They'd be like, what? And here's the thing, I'm not particularly happy that they took a jab at Back to the Future in Endgame, particularly where Tony Stark says, that's a movie called Back to the Future. Even like when you have Ant-Man going, so Back to the Future is a whole bunch of bullshit, and I'm like, screw you. Granted, I may be saying that, out of angst and what have you, but Back to the Future is one of the all-time greats, and you took a stab at it. It's like, ooh, no. I told a certain random one about that. He was a rabbit of negative euphoria. So, yeah, that's where we stand at the moment. I don't know. From Disney's perspective, they need to get this done and resolved, because who will they have as their main flagship star? With Captain America retired, Iron Man is deceased. I mean, what are they going to do with Hulk? I mean, I don't really like what they've done with him per se. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they've done a story arc where Bruce is in control and he actually has some semblance of peace at last. But considering how Captain Marvel has not been well received by the audience, I don't know. We shall find out in the years to come. But for me, like I've mentioned before, I'm not going to partake because, like I said, Far From Home was my last movie. As far as the MCU is concerned, the only way you would get me to come back to the MCU is if Marvel simply said, fine, we'll give you Iron Man 4. And I'm like, and you pay Robert Downey Jr. treble. Because that's the only way he'll do it. I mean, it's not to say that he's doing it because he's greedy. No. It's just that he's a high caliber actor, so therefore you pay him accordingly. It's like getting Michael Jordan to come in for a commercial. You don't pay him $5. You pay him $5 million. Simple as that. And most people say, oh, that's a ripoff. That's Michael Jordan. He's worth it. So, yeah. Hope they can come to a compromise. Lady and the Tramp remake, I'm not even going to give it the time of day. And I was really surprised to learn that Disney owns National Geographic, because at the end of the trailer, they show all the properties that they own below. So they own Pixar, they own Lucasfilms, they own Marvel Studios, and they own National Geographic. I'm like, okay, how, why, and when? Like, when did that happen? I don't know. Until next time, guys, this is MJ Knight. Until next time, guys, this is MJ Knight signing off from Real Features for this extra info special. Happy trails.